This episode of On the Beat is brought to you by Ingles. Shop online with Ingles Curbside Pickup. New curbside stores opening every week. Please welcome Mike Griffith.
Well, everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to tonight's Ingles on the Beat. And here we got a lot going on, obviously, with the University of Georgia. This January can't end soon enough. It's been a tough month for the Bulldogs. Certainly, the national championship was fantastic. It's hard to believe that was just a few weeks ago. So much has happened since then. And as we all know, probably not all of it good. So let's start right out talking about the Georgia players that are going to be at the Senior Bowl this week. This is a really positive thing. This is a huge lift, a huge boost, a huge opportunity for Kenny McIntosh, Chris Smith, Jack Podlesny, and Warren McClendon. And a lot of people, I don't think, are really familiar with the Senior Bowl because in the past, there hadn't been a whole lot of Georgia guys playing in it. The last few years, it's really picked up. Last year, Devontae Wyatt turned himself into a first-round draft pick by dominating at the Senior Bowl. Same with Jermaine Johnson. You remember the former Bulldog that transferred to Florida State. He went down there, dominated. We saw really good things happen for, all the Georgia players that were there last season. A couple years ago, Mark Webb was a guy that really made inroads. I didn't think Mark Webb would play in the NFL, much less get drafted, and he did. The tight end transfer they got from Florida State just a couple of years ago didn't do a whole lot on the field. He goes down there. He ends up a third-round draft pick. So you might be asking, well, what do these guys have left to prove? Why would a two-time national championship Georgia player with all this film and all these games, why would he have to play in one more all-star game? Well, it's not really just about the game. In fact, the game is kind of the smallest part of it. It's about the workouts and the interviews. So I want you to kind of picture this because I know a lot of fans haven't been there and a lot of people don't necessarily watch it on television. It's a great event to cover as a reporter. I think there's more than 1,100 media members that are going to be there this year that have been credentialed. But it's really about the NFL people there. So imagine this. You've got University of South Alabama football stadium where they're practicing. Around the whole perimeter of the field, it's nothing but bodies and coaches and coaching staffs, right? They credential 4 guys per NFL team that can be on the field. So you got 124 more people that are standing on the field that are watching the drills up close, 8 feet away to watch the offensive line go against the defensive line one-on-one, to watch the running backs and the linebackers in one-on-one protection drills, to watch the receivers go head-to-head with the defensive backs one-on-one, right? So this is how a guy like Trey McKitty, he goes down there, he shines in the one-on-one drills, and then after your 2-hour practice, each of the teams practice 2 hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They've got the rest of the night to meet with all these teams. And it's not just the scouts. So the scouts that come out, they'll come to Georgia practice. Everybody watches films, but the general managers and the head coaches and the team owners. And it's an opportunity for these folks to see these players up close and personal. They get to see them, how they interact with their teammates. How do they pick up coaching? Because they all get a playbook. How quick do you learn that NFL playbook? Can you learn it in those 3 or 4 days? How are you when you're getting coached up by the NFL staffs that are there? And this year, each staff will have 8 different coaches on it from different NFL teams. So you've got 16 guys from 16 different NFL teams that are directly involved in the coaching. All 32 teams are represented, and players will meet with all of the teams while they're down. Again, this is in-person interviews. This is one-on-one. So it's like a job opportunity. And all it takes is one guy to like you. They watch the film, they see you on TV, but maybe when they see you up close, when they see you side by side with the other people, that's when they really like you. I see we're already getting some questions about Stetson Bennett. I'm going to talk about Stetson specifically the second half of the show. I really want to talk about some other players and some other things going on at Georgia. I understand this is a big story. I was the guy that had to write about it yesterday. People wonder, Connor Riley does a ton of work on Georgia Beat. You'll see Jeff Sentell with his occasional recruiting articles. Obviously, this week will be a big week. There'll be a few more signings for Georgia, I believe. You'll see some reporting from Jeff. And, of course, you have Brandon Adams every day talking about all these issues. But it just so happened I was the one that was working the Sunday shift when all the Stetson Bennett news broke. So I'll talk to you about all of that in the second half of the show. But right now, I want to talk about the Georgia guys that are doing some really positive things. And I'm going to start with Kenny McIntosh. Jim Nagy is the executive director of the Senior Bowl, and he invites all the players. And like he said, it's really not just about who the Senior Bowl likes. They're in communication with all of the NFL teams. And the NFL teams kind of have an idea of which seniors they're interested in. And they communicate with the Senior Bowl. You know what? I really like this guy. I really like this guy. The Senior Bowl has 9 former NFL scouts that go out and scout throughout the season and pick out guys they like. They really like Kenny McIntosh, like him a lot. Jim Nagy said he believes Kenny McIntosh will be a starting running back in the NFL. Think about that. Cook and Zamir, both very good running backs. Neither one of them started this year. I think, as I've said for a few years now, that Kenny is the best of those 3, but he had to wait his turn. Still along the way, he still had heroics. Remember in 2020 when James Cook couldn't be at the Peach Bowl because his father had unexpectedly passed away? That was Kenny McIntosh on that final drive catching 3 passes from JT Daniels as Georgia came from double digits down to beat an undefeated Cincinnati team and maintain that streak of top 10 finishes under Kirby Smart. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Folks, we're talking about 6 years in a row that Georgia football has finished in the top 10. That's never happened in history. Okay, so what you're seeing now is the best era of Georgia football in history. Now, you can make your arguments about the Vince Dooley teams with Herschel Walker. Herschel was obviously the greatest Georgia football player of all time, and in my opinion, the greatest college football player of all time. I take him over Jim Brown because of his accomplishments. Yeah, there's all sorts of revisionist history, and there's people who don't like the political part of Herschel. Listen, I'm just talking football, man. All the politics and all the after effects, I don't get into that. I judge a guy based on what he did during his Georgia football career, and nobody equaled Herschel Walker's contribution. He carried that team. If you take Herschel Walker out of those 3 Vince Dooley years, I think the Dogs probably win 7 or 8 games. Go back and look at it yourself when you see the contribution. Just Google Herschel. His numbers are mind-blowing. But what we've seen the Dogs do the last 2 years is remarkable. And all these guys at the Senior Bowl, Kenny, Chris Smith. I think Chris Smith is a guy. I think if you take Kenny or Chris Smith away, you could make the argument that Georgia doesn't win one or either of these national titles. Because you think about how versatile Kenny was with over 800 yards rushing and over 500 receiving. There wasn't another back that was going to do that. And you think about the games where Georgia struggled at Missouri, when Kirby talked about that at the national championship celebration, how Kenny carried the team. The offense was struggling, and Kenny McIntosh stepped up in that game, running people over, breaking runs, almost willing the team to win. You think about the struggles they had against Kentucky, couldn't throw the football, and Kenny had, he have 180 total yards. Same thing against Georgia Tech. Major league struggles throwing the ball. Kenny McIntosh stepped up. So he was pivotal for that offense, just as Chris Smith. Chris Smith is the guy that I'm saying I think, is a first ballot Hall of Famer. The pick 6 against Clemson, if that doesn't happen and they lose, Georgia doesn't get the second chance against Alabama in 2021. So I'm giving Chris Smith the game ball for 2021. I think he was the most indisposable player in 2021. Now, 2022, there was a lot of indisposable players. Also, Brock Bowers, by the way, 2021, another guy that I think if you take Brock Bowers away, I don't think you win a championship in 2021 or 2022. But Smith this year, and I know the LSU game, I know how it ended at 50-30 and what it looked like. But on that opening drive, if you'll remember, on that second possession, LSU goes right down the field, and they're fixing to score. It's 0-0. They're either going to score a touchdown or they're going to kick a field goal. And he gets blocked, and Chris scoops it up and goes 96 yards and turns the momentum of that game around early. Georgia needed that. Georgia got outgained like by 50 or 60 yards in the first quarter by LSU. So Chris Smith, absolutely paramount to Georgia's success. So Kenny and Chris, these are two heroes. These are two guys that go on the Wall of Fame. Jack Podlesny, a lot of clutch kicks. I think Georgia really started to take Jack for granted. Remember that Peach Bowl we talked about and that last-minute drive? I think Jack still had to kick, a 53 or a 54-yarder for Georgia to beat Cincinnati and keep. So I think about a lot of Podlesny kicks. He's going to be there. And then Warren McClendon. And this story, I love this story. It's a bittersweet story. And you know that he was a part of that tragic accident. And yet Warren is going to be down there, and he's going to be wearing number 77, which is Devin Willock's number, as a tribute to his teammate. Absolutely love that. I think that's awesome. I can't wait to see Warren. Warren had 37 consecutive starts for Georgia before that injury against, LSU? And then the streak was snapped against Ohio State. Mims started, and Warren played a little bit, but I don't think he was fully go. I hope that Warren McClendon will be full go, because I hope he takes advantage of this opportunity at the Senior Bowl. So these are four guys that I can't wait to talk to. Max Duggan is going to be there, the TCU quarterback. I'm very anxious to talk to Max about the Georgia game. Not to, listen, he had a rough night, but he's a really classy guy. I just want to hear what he says about what Georgia did. I'll tell you, Tyreek Stevenson. Remember Tyreek Stevenson, the guy that Dan Lanning said, holy moly, we got a ball player? He ended up transferring to Miami, but he's one of the most highly regarded safeties in the country. I want to talk to Tyreek about the transfer from Miami to Georgia. I hope I get to talk to all these guys. They have a media day Wednesday. I know that Kenny and Chris and Jack will all be available. I'm not sure what Warren's status is going to be, but we're going to go down there. We're going to talk to all the dogs that we can about the season, about the program, their thoughts about the program, their thoughts about the future. Look, Georgia is starting to dominate the NFL ranks. I think Georgia and Mississippi State are the two SEC schools with 4 players in the Super Bowl. I think Alabama has 3. So the Dogs are very prominent in the NFL. Of course, you know about Jordan Davis. You know about Jacoby Dean on the Eagles, Mecole Hardman. I'm guessing Malik Herring is the other chief. Malik and Mecole been in the league a little bit. So I can't wait to talk to the Georgia guys that are going to be down there in Mobile. I'm going to try to get you guys some video. Again, this is a very unique event. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of great dog fans. I would put this event on your bucket list. If you ever get the opportunity to go to Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, you absolutely need to do it. And not necessarily for the game, but for the week. Go down to the Gulf Coast. First of all, a lot of great restaurants. All right, confession here. I was born in Mobile, Alabama. I am a Mobile, Alabama native. Okay, just so you know. Let me get that out of there. I do love that city. I have an affinity for it. I root for Mobile, Alabama. Mardi Gras is cool. My dream job in college was working at the Mobile Register because I was born there and I was able to work there, and I was so proud of that. It really launched my career. I was covering Alabama, and I was a managing editor for an SEC magazine down there, and those were great years. 2 of my children were born in Mobile, Alabama, in that area, actually in Baldwin County. So I have an affinity for Mobile, Alabama. You're going, what are you talking about? I thought you went to Michigan State. I did. Long story. Mom moved up north. But so I've kind of been all over. I've been everywhere, man. Well, what about the guy, the Tennessee? Yeah, I covered Tennessee for 14 years. So yeah, I did a lot of Vols when they won their national title. And then I went back to Michigan State and covered some Tom Izzo. And oh yeah, there was some Auburn in there. 93, my first SEC job. They went undefeated. So I have been everywhere over the course of my career. It's been an unbelievable adventure. Covered Georgia now the last 5 years. This has been remarkable. This has been a great beat. I've met so many wonderful people living in this area. You guys know that have been to Athens and the surrounding areas. It's a beautiful place to live. And really, the faith that I had in this job twofold. The faith was twofold. One, Cox Enterprises, which obviously Atlanta Journal-Constitution, as well as DawgNation, previously SEC Country. It's just a great company, and I'm not just shilling because I work for that company. I'm telling you that is the premier media company in the nation in terms of how well they treat their employees and the things that we have going in Cox Enterprises. You know, they're very diversified. They do many different things, but they're very good to their employees. So that was one. But two, this is going to sound crazy, right? So I've been to Athens plenty of times as a member of the visiting media, and I always liked Sanford Stadium. I always thought it was an awesome game day. I hadn't really been to downtown Athens that much because when you're traveling from out of town, you can't get a room. All the Georgia fans book it up. So you end up staying in Atlanta and driving in, driving out. Like, I didn't really know how great Athens was. But you know what? I knew how friendly everybody was. And they've got a guy over there in their sports information department named Claude Felton. And Claude's been there. He was hired by Coach Dooley way back in the 70s. And I'd always had a great relationship with Claude Felton. And so, and I thought, well, you know what? If Claude's this nice, maybe everybody is. So that was why I had the faith to cover Georgia. It's been a great 5 years. So getting back to the Mobile, Alabama thing, it's free for fans to go. They go in the stadium, they get to watch, they bring their binoculars, they take notes, fantasy football geeks kind of thing. It's just a great event. And then they have a parade. I haven't seen that yet, but they have like a Mardi Gras parade with the players. I believe that's Thursday or Friday night. And then the game's just kind of cool. So it's a great event. It's a great event to cover. It's a great event for fans that like to see the one-on-ones. I mean, if you're a purist, because now it's not about what team you're on, or your surrounding, or your offensive coordinator. You are one-on-one, and it doesn't matter what's on that other guy's helmet, okay? Because it's not about the team. It's not about Kirby. It's not about what your supporting cast is like. It's just you, and it's just him, and it's one-on-one, and it is awesome. It is an awesome display of football. So really fired up about going to cover Senior Bowl this week. I'll give you all the coverage that I can from down there. Let's talk about the trade. The trade. Did you know there was a trade? I bet you didn't know there was a trade until today when you saw that Ryland Godey is transferring to Mississippi State. He was the player to be named later for RaRa Thomas, apparently. You're going, wait a minute. What's going on with RaRa Thomas? Well, nothing. We haven't heard anything. Okay, you saw that RaRa was involved with a 17-year-old, presumption being his girlfriend from Mississippi, who was, in the dorm on campus, and they had some sort of quarrel that led to the authorities and charges. And you read about it, and supposedly he's mad because she followed somebody on Instagram. You're going, what? This sounds like high school stuff. Listen, I don't want to make light of it. If anybody was hurt here and there was any sort of violence that was inappropriate, Georgia's going to follow through and dismiss. But there is due process, and we don't know all the details. This will play out, and to this point, RaRa Thomas has not been dismissed. So Georgia's stance, to me, I'm assuming, because there hasn't been a lot of information on this, is they're going to wait and they're going to see what happens. And isn't that the way it should be? Shouldn't you have due process? I think so. I think in this case, yes. So I'm not ready to say I think he's going to be on the team or off the team, but it's kind of on hold right now. We're all waiting for this to play out. We'll see what happens. If he stays with Georgia, if he doesn't stay with Georgia, I don't know. It's relevant for the depth chart. Obviously, A.D. Mitchell is moved on to Texas. And listen, this is where I want to get on my soapbox a little bit and preach. And I don't think it's so much to this audience. I know this audience pretty well. You guys come on and hear me every Monday. The people that don't like me probably don't watch. So most people that watch are on board with me. We're in an era now when a guy transfers away, you can't throw him. You shouldn't throw him under the bus. I mean, you can, but you shouldn't, because the door swings both ways, right? Georgia's taking guys in from other places. Georgia's going to lose some guys to other places. And typically the guys that Georgia loses, they really didn't, it's not a make or break. Though there's been guys that have left that Kirby didn't want to leave. Jalen Kimber was a guy. Kirby didn't want Jalen Kimber to leave. JT Daniels, Kirby didn't want JT to leave. but it wasn't like there were make or break. I mean, JT left, but Stetson stayed. Kimber left, but the defensive backfield was full. AD left, but there's other receivers. And in AD's case, I think there's family involved, right? I think there's a child involved. And I just don't think anybody should begrudge. Even Jermaine Burton. I know a lot of people got upset about Jermaine leaving. Players leave the program. I think fans need to really curb the criticism. And again, I don't like to preach too much, but we've been conditioned for a long time that once a guy signs with a program, that's where he's going to stay. And if he leaves, there's something wrong. And that's just not the way it is anymore. Again, in the case of A.D. Mitchell, I believe there was a child involved, and I don't think anybody can begrudge a young man that wants to go home to be closer to a child, or even a young man who just wants a better situation. Think about it. Kirby goes out, and he makes no bones about this, and signs the best players that he can. And you may have been a starter, but you may lose your job to somebody else that comes in. So the door kind of swings both ways. I don't think people always know everything that goes on. So like in the case of Jermaine Burton, I know there were some people with some angst that were upset, but you don't know everything that happened with Jermaine Burton. You don't know what was going on behind the closed doors. And you know what? You don't really want to know. And Jermaine isn't going to air that out any more than George is going to air that out. So I guess my thought is, don't be so quick to jump to conclusions. And we're in a world right now where transfers is just a part of it. Georgia typically doesn't lose guys that they want to keep. Now, they've lost guys before that they wanted to keep. Jalen Kimber went to Florida. JT Daniels went to West Virginia. Kirby wanted both of those guys to stay. But there were other players there that led to their decisions and Kirby's understanding. So for the most part, Georgia keeps who they want to keep. They bring in other guys, right? They're going to bring in some guys. RaRa Thomas, he's going to come in and play over some of these freshmen or sophomores. How do you think they feel, right? So I guess my whole point on this is don't be so quick to judge. Listen, I want to take my halftime break right now. I want to thank my sponsor, Ingles. Appreciate the sponsorship. When we come back, we're going to dive into the Stetson Bennett information that we have, and I'm going to share with you what Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Senior Bowl, had to say about Stetson Bennett. And then we'll talk also about Todd Monken and what his future could look like, as well as Mike White and the Georgia basketball team. But right now, let's take a break and recognize our sponsor, Ingles.
That Ingles sells more organics than any other store, or that they run their own dairy, or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else, or that they have Energy Smart stores, or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department, or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Welcome back to the program. Mike Griffith here, second half of the show. Let's start with Todd Monken. 56-year-old guy has won 2 national championships with Georgia. He's the highest paid coordinator in the nation, but he's going on these job interviews in the NFL. It's like, well, what's up with that? Listen, I understand every college fan base thinks that their school is the best. And they can all probably, and most all of them in the SEC, except for maybe Vanderbilt, can make an argument for themselves. Maybe Mississippi State too. Could make an Ole Miss. A lot of them, all right? Half of them, we'll say, could make that argument. But it's not about that for Monken. The question is, what is Todd Monken's end game? It's not to make as much money as he possibly can. That's not it. He wants to win games. You've heard him say he'd rather win in Alaska than lose in San Diego. That's true. But I think he wants to win a Super Bowl. I don't know that he ever wants to be a head coach. I'm not sure where Todd's at with that because the Purdue opportunity would have been really prime for that. I don't think he had a lot of interest in it. And I don't want to speak for him as far as being an NFL head coach. I don't think necessarily he'd turn it down. But I think when you interview with these jobs, I don't think Monken's a guy that would interview if he wasn't interested. And I think, but maybe if you don't interview, people get the idea that you're not still open to potential ideas. So you kind of got it. So I guess what I'm saying is, could he be interviewing just to kind of keep everything open? Because he's been in the business long enough to know that one bad season and you're fired. And that's just how it is. You heard him say that. You heard him say, oh, they talk about family. You know, you're not family. If I have one bad year and I suck, you're going to fire me. That's how it really works. You've heard Monken say that. His relationship with Kirby. Hey, he's my boss. I'm here to win games. The minute I think it's anything else, I'm wrong. So this is a grizzled veteran coach that knows to keep his options open, that knows to keep his eyes open. And I just don't think we can guesstimate because we don't really know. What if he goes and it feels right? He just gets a good feeling about it. It's not that he doesn't like Georgia. It's not that he's not committed to Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift or Gunnar Stockton. Business is business with Monken. Hopefully we'll know something this week. I don't think it's hurt Georgia in recruiting. If he does leave, Georgia's kind of prepared. Let's be honest. Mike Bobo's right there. And Bobo did some great things. Remember when we had Jeremy Pruitt on? And Jeremy told us that what a guru and how well-respected Bobo is. I believe Jeremy. I don't think Jeremy just talks to talk. I think you guys saw that throughout the year. And what's going on with Jeremy right now, by the way? I don't know. I just, I didn't invite him on tonight. I just thought, you know what? Whatever he's got going. And I've just been respectful of that. It was fun to have him this year. I think you guys and me both would probably like to see Jeremy back coaching again. Who knows where or when. But he was very high on Bobo. Not to say that Mike Bobo would necessarily be the guy, but Bobo would be somewhere in the fold, we assume. I think he's back for a while. His son's on the team, and that would be a healthy thing. So I don't think there's another Monken out there. I think Monken was special. But I'm not going to say Georgia couldn't win another national title without him. I think they could. I think they absolutely could. I think the quarterback play is going to be outstanding, and I think the offense is going to be really good, really, really good. Okay, so now I promised I would talk about this. I want to be honest with you. This is a touchy subject when we talk about Stetson Bennett, and it's touchy for the media because a lot of people will always appreciate what Stetson has done for the school, his journey, his story. It's remarkable, to go from a walk-on, fourth-string guy, no other SEC or Power 5 school wanted in 2019, and Georgia gives him a last-minute offer because they can't get a backup for Jake Fromm. They got Jake and nobody else. Fields left him high and dry. So Stetson comes back as a backup, and 2020, they go out and sign Jamie Newman, and they hire Monken, and Monken and Newman don't match. So Monken goes out and gets JT Daniels, his handpicked guy, but then JT's knee's not right because he hasn't been able to rehab it correctly because of the COVID stuff. Has slowed down all the rehab and doctor visits. And Dwan Mathis, who's recovered from brain surgery. I mean, my goodness, if we had enough drama at Georgia, recovers from brain surgery, he gets the start and doesn't do well early. And then Stetson comes in and lights it up and then takes over until he hurts his shoulder and they lose to Florida. Then JT comes in and throws for 401. I mean, you guys know the story. It's just all this drama. Stetson 2021, pretty good most of the time. Some games not so good. Not good against Florida. Not good the first three quarters. Thank goodness for the championship defense or they may not win those two games. So the defense kind of, to me, carried 2021. Stetson played great in the fourth quarter, but the first three quarters did not play well. This year, Stetson comes out on fire. Monken's designed the whole offense around him, 49-3. Over South Carolina, I wrote the story after South Carolina. Hey, the Heisman hype is real. And then there's some stinkers in there. Didn't play particularly well against Sanford. Didn't play great against Kent State. Didn't play good at Missouri. Played bad at Missouri. Didn't play great in November. Tennessee, awesome for the Georgia was awesome against Tennessee, but then not awesome against parts of the Florida game. Not awesome parts of Mississippi State. Not good against Kentucky or Georgia Tech, but then great against LSU and great in the fourth quarter against Ohio State and fantastic and unstoppable against TCU. It's never been all roses. This year's team took everybody. It took offense, defense, special teams. They're all two-time champs. Stetson got a lot of favor from the media. The Heisman Trophy, there's over 900 voters. There's how many of them are Heisman guys? 40 or 50 former Heisman winners vote tops. The other 850 or 900, they're media. The media sent Stetson Bennett to New York as a Heisman finalist. That was the media. The SEC coaches, they didn't even vote him first team All-SEC. So I get upset. I'll just tell you, when people say, the media was bad to Stetson, that's not true. That's absolutely false. That is wrong. Now, you want to say you were critical of the way he played. You know what? we're critical of the way every quarterback played. I still remember writing about Jake Fromm having a bad game against Kentucky in the rain. Remember that? We all talked about it. The fans booed Jake Fromm. Remember that? He got booed. Aaron Murray, there's still people. Matt Stafford, tell me, what quarterback doesn't get critiqued? It comes with the position. Stetson Bennett was not mistreated by the University of Georgia or its coaches or the media or the fans. Now, if you want to say that doubt was part of his story because he was an underdog and he was undersized, you're welcome to do that. But to say that Stetson Bennett hasn't been treated by the media is wrong. And here's where people really get it wrong. Stetson Bennett does not have this chip on the shoulder that everybody seems to think he does. Stetson Bennett has always been confident in himself. This is what you're missing. Go back and read. Go back and listen. Stetson doesn't look in the mirror and say, I'm not good enough. Stetson looks in the mirror and says, I know I'm good enough. That's what makes Stetson a dog. The confidence, not the lack of confidence, not that I'm going to show him. He explained that at the media days. That, look, if you've got to use outside motivation to be good, you're in trouble. Because what do you do when you're getting praise? And he was right. So I know that fits the story. Everybody wants this Hollywood story to be a certain way. They want it to be the undersized guy that nobody wanted and everybody was mean to and who didn't believe in himself. And that's just wrong. This is what I say. The real story of Stetson Bennett is better than the convenience story. So start going with the real story, okay? Give the guy credit for being confident in himself. Give the fans credit for believing in Stetson Bennett, okay? Don't get mad at the media because they critique him, because we're going to critique whoever the quarterback is next year. Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff, doesn't matter. You throw 2 interceptions, we're going to say you played a bad game. We are, okay? I don't care what your story is. That's how it works. The quarterback gets the majority of the criticism or the majority of the credit. Doesn't matter who you are. As for the other parts of the Stetson Bennett story, everybody wants to see this. TV painted this picture. Look, Stetson Bennett's not on the honor roll. I said Stetson not on the UGA honor roll, all right? That's not him. So let's not try and make it him. He's supposed to graduate this spring with his bachelor's degree. Don't ask me how. That's just the way it is. This is the real story. Stetson didn't come to Georgia because he loved school. He came to school to play football, and that's okay, because I got news for you. Most all these guys are here to play football. Now, some of them, and to different degrees, all right? But let's not make him anything he's not. Conversely, Stetson had a bad night in Dallas. He made some bad decisions. I'm not writing him off. I'm going to tell you that. I'm not going to write him off. I'm concerned of a parent who has adult children. This is concerning. I want Stetson to find some good leadership. I don't know who his agents are, but he needs to listen to them. And I hope that some other former Georgia players will reach out to Stetson and say, look, this was your wake-up call. You're not in Athens anymore. Those police officers, they're not going to drive you back to your apartment, okay, to taking you to the tank. And hopefully this was a wake-up call for Stetson, and this will just be another part of the story. But this is a real story, folks, okay? This isn't some fairy tale. This is a 25-year-old young man who's living under the brightest spotlight of any college football player in the country. The level of scrutiny is unbelievable. That's what comes with fame for everybody, not just Stetson. Anybody, any quarterback who won 2 national titles would be getting the same level of scrutiny and be talked about as much as Stetson is right now. This is part of it. Stetson is a small town guy, okay? And I don't know that he was ready for all the fame. I'll be honest. I thought it was a red flag when he talked at the ceremony in his parade behavior. But to each his own. And as I said then, it's up to everybody to judge. But that didn't look like the same guy that I talked to the year before. And listen, let's be honest. Fame and success affects everybody in different ways. So it was a bad night in Dallas. You probably saw the reports. 6 a.m. Central Time. Police are called to a neighborhood with townhouses. somebody knocking on the door. ESPN says the police told them it was Stetson. I don't know. What does that mean? You say, oh, this is nothing. Well, it's not nothing. It's something, because it's Stetson Bennett, and he is a famous quarterback. And that was odd behavior for a guy who was in that area to be training instead of at the Senior Bowl performing. Now, again, I'm not writing off Stetson. I don't think you should write off Stetson. I think this happens. I'm not saying it's all okay, but I'm also not saying this is the end. It's not the end of Stetson Bennett. It's just not. That's not how he's built. He's a resilient guy. I think this is going to be a wake-up call for him. I think that he'll move forward. I still think he'll be on an NFL roster. I don't know if or when he'll be drafted. I'm going to tell you what Jim Nagy said, the Senior Bowl executive director, about Stetson Bennett earlier tonight on Outkick. If you're wondering why Stetson never got an official invite, neither did Warren McClendon. It had to do with the timing of the tragedy, and Nagy was sensitive to that and didn't want to be sending out invites when Georgia was going through this mourning period after this terrible loss of Chandler and Devin. But he reached out to Stetson and said, hey, we'd like you to come. He said, quote unquote, I was working with Stetson people. I thought it made a ton of sense for him. What he did in Athens was incredible. But Stetson Bennett, with his chip on his shoulder, is a different quarterback than he's going to want to be in the NFL. The NFL wants a backup that's going to be dependable, stable, reliable, supportive of the starter, with the low ego. And this was an opportunity for Stetson to turn the page. He's had a great college career, but that's in the past now. He needs to look forward to what he'll do in his pro career. This is Jim Nagy talking. He had an opportunity to come here and be on a team with Luke Getsy, who is the offensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. That's a team with a murky quarterback situation, and he could have really helped himself down here. You saw I wrote those stories last week for DawgNation about Stetson's opportunity to be Justin Fields' backup. He's the perfect guy for that Bears system, in my opinion. Nagy says, I hate to see what happened. My phone was lighting up the other day. Obviously, he's not in a great place, because that stuff doesn't happen if you are. And he's right about that. You shouldn't opt out of the Senior Bowl, and then that happened the day of arrival. If he just comes to Mobile, he doesn't get in that trouble. I'm concerned Stetson isn't in a great spot, and I think that's kind of how we all feel, right? So that's what the Senior Bowl said about it. If you're asking how it's going to affect the NFL, some teams are going to hold it against him. Other teams are going to meet with them and draw their own conclusions. It is unfortunate. Other quarterbacks have been through this, most notably Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel. You hate to add Stetson to that list because I don't think what we've seen from Stetson in the last 2 months is the guy that was at Georgia the predominant amount of his career. I'm going to say this. I don't like people making jokes about it. I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's cool. I don't think it adds swag. Maybe this is where I'm the old man telling you to get off my lawn. There's high standards at the University of Georgia. Stetson represents a lot of people when the governor gives you a call out in your hometown, gives you a day. But those people, I guarantee you, in his community support him. I know a lot of Georgia fans support him. I know there's some Georgia fans that are going to be skeptical. And all those things are possible. And it's up to everybody to judge this for themselves, right? But what really matters, the most important thing, is the health and well-being of Stetson, and that he gets right back on the right path. And I believe he will. I'm optimistic that he will. That's what I think will happen next. As far as his career in the NFL, I don't know. So much of it depends on what team you go to, how well you fit in the system. I agree with Nagy. I would have loved to have seen Stetson at the Senior Bowl so people could see his grit, his playmaking. I think this would have been good for him, but he didn't. And so now he's got to play with the hand he's dealt. He'll continue to work out, I'm sure of it. He'll get a combine invite. I think he's going to run a really good number. He's super fast. He's super quick. He has good arm strength. He's improved his technique much better than he was a year ago. And I think there's certain systems that he can run in the NFL. You're seeing more spread now, more of the college game, as Monken says. So there's a place for him, but he's going to have to dial himself back in, and he's going to have to impress those NFL GMs and those coaches, that he's humbled himself and he's ready to go back to the blue-collar guy. So that's my take on Stetson. I want to look at some of your comments. If you've got questions. Oh, real quick, basketball team, big win over South Carolina the other night. Had to have it. Snapped a 12-game losing streak to the Gamecocks. That's the worst team in the league. It took Georgia overtime. Mike White is working hard, but they've got their work cut out for them, okay? They're at Auburn Wednesday night and then at A&M. Really need to steal one of those. The Dawgs right now, 4-4 in the league. That's really good to be 500. If they could finish 500, that would be huge. I think it's going to be tough. At Auburn, at A&M. Then they come home to Ole Miss and Kentucky. If you can go 2-2 out of those games, then you got LSU and Alabama. Once again, can you split those games? So you do your best if you're Georgia to split, to stay 500, win at home, steal a few on the road. I like how hard the team plays, but Mike doesn't really have the same pieces as other teams. You saw that at Tennessee. I would say Tennessee right now is a Final Four team, if not a national champion. That is the best defensive team in the country by far. Defense travels. This team is different than other Tennessee teams. Just so you know, my thought, Rick Barnes hasn't been past the Sweet 16, pretty well documented. I covered him for 2 years. He's a really good guy. This is his best team. May not be the flashiest, but this is the best Tennessee team. Look for them to win the league. Questions? Do you have any questions for me, guys? Before I go tonight, I appreciate the audience. Apologize for the slight technical difficulties. Let me know if you have any questions for me tonight. I'm looking at the comments right now. What do you make of so many players going to Nebraska? I'd say good. I think Matt Rule's a really good coach. I'm going to tell you, Nebraska is a bucket list stadium. When I covered the Big Ten, I went there twice. That place rocks. It is awesome. Lincoln is awesome. Nebraska is awesome. Stadium, tradition. I hope that they get it going again. They're one of those powerhouses that went away. Really have an affinity and really came to respect Nebraska when I covered the Big Ten. Really sad that it's fallen off. Going to be tough. Good for the Georgia players there. Good for them. Gilbert, I don't know. I mean, look, Kirby and Georgia put all their resources. They put Eric's health first, and they put all their resources into him. He's an incredible talent, okay? But as you know, there's more to it than just talent. And Georgia did all they could, and I think they served Eric Gilbert really well, and hopefully he can build on the progress that he made at Georgia. Do I like Hurts? I like him a lot. I covered Tennessee in 2016. I thought Josh Dobbs should have been the SEC Player of the Year over Jalen Hurts. But I got to cover Jalen in a couple other games, and I got to spend some time with him in Santa Clara the year that Alabama played Clemson in the title game. Tua was the starter, so Hurts was kind of over there by himself on the side. And I spent some time with him. I'm going to tell you, this is a very mature, hardworking, accountable player. Didn't want any pity, didn't want to be the victim, all right? And I loved his attitude, and I understand why he's such a good leader. This is a hard-nosed, no-nonsense kid who doesn't want anybody to feel sorry for him, didn't complain about the Tua situation, handled it with class, went to Oklahoma, played it out, and good for Jalen Hurts. He's a player that's easy to root for. Can't help but root for a guy like that. What else do you got for me tonight, guys? I'm looking. What do I think about Deion prime time at Colorado? I'll tell you what, I there's some things I love about it, and there's some things I don't like about it. And I like access as much as everybody and anybody, but I think too much in front of the cameras. To me, some things are sacred. Now, when Kirby's speeches get out, I think we all laugh and chuckle. But when I see Deion, kicking a guy off the team, it takes me out of my comfort zone. How's it going to play out? I don't know. Some kids are attracted to that. At the end of the day, you got to win games. Right now it's all theater. He's undefeated. At the end of the day, he's got to win games. We'll see. Colorado was once a powerhouse long ago. Can they reach that status again? That depends on what the rest of the school does and how much money they got in their budget. Let's be honest. You got to pay to get players these days. What else do we got here? I see criticism for Stetson. Fair enough. Praise for Stetson. Fair enough. Again, to each their own when it comes to Stetson Bennett. There's things I really liked about him. And then I told you there were things at the end that didn't appear to be the same person. So I'm very much, everybody's got their own opinion on Stetson. And that's the way it is with most quarterbacks, isn't it? Again, it's just, we're so close to it because it's at Georgia, but aren't all quarterbacks polarizing to some extent? What do you guys think of Matt Stafford? Right? I mean, people say, "Oh, when he was here, Matt, liked to go out and stuff." I wasn't here. I covered him in the Sugar Bowl against Hawaii. Aaron Murray. What do you think of him? Jake Fromm. I mean, aren't we all just divided on all these guys? This is really no different. It's just kind of a bigger scale, and the rest of the nation's looking in. So that's kind of my thought. I'm just going to say, don't cast your judgment. It's the Stetson Bennett story is not over, folks. I promise you. I've been doing this a long time. I know resiliency when I see it, and the story ain't over. Don't give up on Stetson yet. I know that he hasn't given up on himself. He had, he's had some bad moments, but I think this could be a wake-up call. The quarterback battle, well, number one, is Monken coming back? If Monken's not coming back, just throw the cards in the air because we don't know what the next guy's going to want to do. Beck is a guy that is more prone to the spread, big electric arm, more knowledge of the Monken system, more experience in it. If Monken comes back, it favors Beck. Vandergriff, Stetson Bennett on steroids, man. I mean, stronger arm, better runner, bigger guy, great leader. And then Gunner's a little bit of both. Gunner's bigger than I thought. I haven't seen enough of him to playing yet to draw any conclusions, but he's a baller. So it just kind of depends on which coordinator you've got and also the supporting cast. Like if these receivers aren't any good that they brought in, Kirby's not going to play four wide. That's what happened in 2021. JT got back healthy, but Kirby's like, how can we go 4 or 5 wide receiver if we only got 6 or 7 healthy guys? And this double tight end thing in RPO is working. It was more about scheme than it was player. And Kirby, that's how Kirby's built. He looks at, and so is Monken, by the way, and all good coaches. They look at their personnel, and it's almost like rather than picking the quarterback and working around, they look at the personnel and they say, okay, now which quarterback fits this better? I think if it's Beck, I think you're going to see more spread and a higher pass-run ratio, whereas Vandergriff and Stockton, I think you're going to see more balance. Does JT get drafted? Not this year. He's at Rice right now. He's working with Marcus Tuiasosopo, a former NFL quarterback. Some of you might remember played at Washington. Mike Bloomgren. JT is in an NFL system. That's why he went to Rice. He likes the offense. He has a lot of control at the line of scrimmage. Luke McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's little brother is there, huge playmaker. Rice brings back 10 starters. Now, that's no guarantee, but JT's working on his mobility. I think he could be an NFL backup. Let's see what happens. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to have his mobility. He's got to put it all together, and this is it at Rice. So that's the story with JT Daniels. Was this past year's team the best physically ready team you've ever seen? No, I'm going to say 2021 was better. The receivers got a little banged up, but look at the depth that you had at quarterback. Stetson wasn't even your number 2. You were 3 deep at quarterback, JT, Beck, Stetson. The running back was deep. Pickens came on late that year, but the defense to me was the separator. It's why I would pick 2021 over 2022 in a head-to-head game. That defense was unbelievable, folks. I mean, not just Jalen Carter, but Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt. You still had Chris Smith and all these other guys, but you had Lewis Seen back there. Lewis still an upgrade over Starks. Starks for a freshman was amazing, but Seen was better. The corners were a little bit better. I'll take Kendrick over first-year Kamari Lassiter. I think Lassiter could be better than Kendrick this year. Same Keely Ringo. The linebackers were unbelievable, right? Quay Walker, first-round pick, unbelievable. You had Jamon Dumas-Johnson at the ready, but Nakobe Dean was ahead of him. 2021 slightly better. 2022, a better season. 2021, a better team. Does that make sense? 2021, a better team. 2022, a better season. That's how I would explain that. Any other questions here, guys? I really appreciate the questions. I enjoy talking with you guys. It's a lot of fun. Someone predicting that if the Monken Stetson situation was tense. We know that. There's a reason why Buster had to talk between them. Monken and Stet did not get along. You got to understand that their personalities clashed. That was not a good, but the fact that Georgia worked around that, unbelievable. And to be clear, Monken is a tough guy. He's tough on everybody's tail, right? But Georgia worked around that. It was remarkable. It's been a remarkable year. I mean, that's all we can say. So I'm going to close the show down. I think tonight, I think we need to hope for the best for everybody. January has been very emotionally charged, and it's been tough in many respects on Georgia. Certainly, the tragic wreck was just, it still brings tears to my eyes to think about it, and I'm sure you all as well. No one wants to see young people, in that situation. That's very sad. The Stetson situation brings me concern, because at the end of the day, this is just football, okay? But Stetson is a human being, and he's under the spotlight, and there's a lot of scrutiny. And I know that his loved ones are rallying around him. And I understand that there's the Stetson, the quarterback, that we're going to critique in the media, but the Stetson, the person that everybody's going to support. He's a human being, okay? He's a young kid that gave his heart for Georgia, and you want to see the best for him as a person. On the field, we're going to critique. We're going to critique the running back. We're going to critique the safeties. We're going to critique any quarterback under center. But there's a person involved here. And that's why I don't like to see the jokes and stuff on social media. I know a lot of people think it's just Twitter. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a guy that just ripped me on Twitter, some no-name guy, and I wrote him a note. I said, did I ever do anything to you? Why did you write me? He's like, man, it's just Twitter. That's accepted. Well, you know what? It's not. In my book, it's not. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Mike's too sensitive. Who knew? I'm just sensitive. You just never knew that, right? I guess my point is, let's all try to be nice to each other. Let's all try to be nice to each other. It's been a tough off season, man. We got a lot of great things that happened last year, but man, these last few weeks have been rough. And I'm looking forward to being at the Senior Bowl. There's going to be a lot of positivity there. And I predict you're going to see some positivity and forward spin coming out of the Stetson thing. I don't know anything for sure, but just based on what I know about him and the program, I think you'll see a rebound. I really do. I think you'll see Kirby in the next few weeks. He may not hold a press conference this week, but Georgia's going to get back on track, okay? It's going to happen. There's a lot of good leadership over there between Josh Brooks and Kirby Smart that, they'll get it back together. So, hey, tomorrow morning, DawgNation Daily, 10 o'clock. Jeff Santel, Wednesday night. Stay tuned. This is going to be a very busy news week. You're going to want to keep your eyes and ears open. Listen to what Brandon's got to tell you tomorrow on DawgNation Daily. For my producer, Michael Carvel, this is Mike Griffith. Thanks for joining me tonight. Everybody, have a great week.